what's the performance on older technologies with newer graphics cards. Today we're looking at the i3 4170 on my i3 series, so let's get going. Hello and welcome back to Nelly's Nerd Cave, and today we're looking at the i3 4170 where I'm continuing with my i3 gaming series. This is the 4th generation Intel Core processor. It's a socket 1150. It runs at 3.7 gigahertz with a TDP of 54 watts. It's 2 cores, 4 threads, and it's based on 22 nanometer technologies. This was released in 2015 and is now 9 years old. What's it like to game on? Well, we'll find out shortly. But first, what are we placing with this? What platform are we using? So, just as before, the thing that stays the same is the memory. I'm still using 16 gigabytes of memory. In this case, this is DDR3. I can use 2 Kingston DDR3 8 gig sticks running at 1600 megahertz. I'm still using the Kioxia Xperia 480GB 2.5-inch SSD with Windows 10 installed on there with 3D Mark Time Spy as well as Port Royal and Doom Eternal. I'm still using my trusted 27-inch MSI monitor, the G271, which is a 145Hz monitor and runs at a maximum of 1080p. Again, if you're wondering why I chose 1080p, because the Steam hardware survey that they do once a year says that most people are still running games at 1920 by 1080. And that's why I've chosen this, to be kind of in line with what's going on. Today, the motherboard is this. This is the Asus. It's the Asus B85 Pro Gamer. This has 5-phase power design. It's based on the Intel B85 single chip architecture. It supports XMP. However, I'm not using XMP at this point. I'm just going to leave everything as defaults and everything as standard. A nice little motherboard for what I paid for it. Again, I will also be using the Thermalright Assassin King, which is a 120mm CPU fan with PWM. It has 5 heat pipes, and that is going to be on top of there as well. And as always, I'm using the same 3 graphics cards. I am using the MSI GTX 970 Gaming 4GB. This has GDDR5 RAM and it has a clock speed of 1253 megahertz and it runs at PCIe 3 and was released in 2014. I'm also using the GTX 1650. This is by Palette and this is the Game Pro Overclocked Edition. This again has 4 gigabytes of GDDR6. It runs at 1410 megahertz and again is PCIe 3. But this card was released in 2020 and it's still a card that's been sold on 12th and 13th gen processors in my local PC world. And finally, I am using the RTX 3060. This is the MSI version, the Ventus 2X, and this one comes with 12 gigabytes of GDDR6. It clocks at 1807 megahertz and it runs at PCIe 4, and this was released in 2021. Now, I know these are all different PCIe generations. We've got 2 PCIe Generation 3s, a Generation 4. This particular motherboard only runs at Gen 3 speeds, so they'll all be at the same speeds, all be running at the same PCIe generation, and hopefully we shall see some decent results. So with that, let's get to the build. So now the build's complete and all the benchmarks are done. We start with the GTX 970 with 3D Mark Time Spy, which is running at 20 to 25 frames per second throughout this demonstration. And the score right at the very end is 3053, which is absolutely fantastic for this type of card, which goes to show that you could potentially run this card with some modern gaming, as it does mention that with a 1440p monitor you can get up to 40 plus frames per second. This video is brought to you by VIP SCD Key. If you head over there using my links in the description below, you'll find they offer cheap OEM Windows 10 and 11 keys for which you can use my discount coded links, which give you big discounts on the specified Windows keys. They also offer Office 2019, which you'll be able to get for only £28.28 using the code NNC2. Follow the links in the description below. Now moving on to Doom Eternal. You'll notice that we have some frame rates of between 34 and 50 frames per second, and the CPU is only 96%. So as we're moving up the i3 processors all the way up the generations, we can see that our utilization on the CPU when gaming is becoming less. So now moving on to the GTX 1650, and in 3D Mark Time Spy we can see that we have between 19 and 25 frames per second within the demonstration. And we have a lower score here of 3030. It's only down a couple of points from the previous one of 3053. However, this could be down to the CPU activity in the background because I'm capturing this using OBS Studio. So it's within margin of error. Doom Eternal has between 45 and 60 frames per second, but the CPU here is up again to 100% utilization. Again, this could be down to the fact that I'm using OBS Studio to capture the screen, as I don't have a capture device to complete this. So again, good scores, good utilization. And now onto the RTX 3060. Remember, this has 12 gigabytes of GDDR6. And within 3D Mark Time Spy, we're getting scores of 48 to 60 frames per second within the actual demo. So when we get to the scores at the end, we have a whopping score of 4810, which is really good for this motherboard and graphics card combo. It also says that at 1440p we can get 70 plus FPS. Again, a lot of these scores may be hindered by the fact that I'm using OBS Studio to capture the screen behind. Now within Doom Eternal, we have between 50 and 89 frames per second, which is a massive improvement compared to the previous two cards. But the CPU is still at 100% utilization. Again, this could be because I'm using OBS in the background to capture everything, but a very easy, playable game that's manageable. I think these are really good scores. So there we have it. All three cards are now tested and you've just seen the results. What does that tell us? Well, if we compare all the videos from all my previous ones with the first gen, second and third generation processors, we can see that we have an improvement in scores as we go up through the CPUs, as well as an improvement in graphics scores as we go through the CPUs. I know that with this motherboard, with an i7 within it, I was getting some really good frame rates from a 2070, which is really good for this particular motherboard. I had this for years before I upgraded to a 10th gen. So I know that what this board is pretty capable of doing. It is a gaming board. It's really useful. Can you game with these? Of course you can. It's really good scores. There are people out there on Facebook Marketplace selling these types of processor combinations with the earmark of gaming within them, and they are working really well and very successfully. I would say this would be a very nice starting point for most people who would wish to start doing some pretty light gaming. Third and second generation at a push if you really want to, but a 4th generation is a definite, especially when we move on to things like the i5 and the i7, where you'll see a bigger improvement with the scores massively. So if you like the content I'm creating and you wish to support what I'm doing, please like and subscribe in the link below. Also, if you wish, buy me a coffee, follow the link below and sponsor what I do. And until next time, see you later.